All right, good morning. Sunday, last day of January 2021. Let us set our intention using the four measurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Let's just go into some sitting meditation. Very quick review. So seated, cross-legged, like this. Cushion helps to have your hips either level with your knees or above your knees, depending on your comfort level. You may not need a cushion. You may be perfectly fine sitting on the floor. Back straight, not rigid, not like at attention, not like that, but just kind of relaxed, but straight up. Basically, so the energy and air flows really unobstructedly. Hands, I like palm and the back of the hand curved in the lap, kind of like this. You could do this. You can do this. Some people do this. The ring finger and the... Not critical, whatever feels comfortable. Neck straight. Head is slightly tilted down. So the teeth are apart. The lips can be closed, but just relax. Not a lot. You don't want tension in the jaw. The tongue kind of rests between, behind the top teeth, where the teeth meet the roof of your mouth. Tibetan Buddhist tradition, eyes are open. Resting, the gaze is resting on whatever's before it, not intensely locked, staring intensely, and not spaced out, unfocused. Breath is through the nose, unless you can't do that, and do it through the mouth. We focus our attention on the space between the nose and the top of the mouth. Breath is a normal, easy breath, not a deep breath, not a shallow breath. If you need a burst of oxygen during the course of the sitting, take it, but go back to just the normal breath. We will start with a 7-minute meditation. Let's start. Cool. I believe the word Tibetan for meditation is gom. I could be wrong. But it means the same thing as habituation, meditation. And that's what we're doing. We're really trying to create a new connection to our thinking, to our thoughts, to our mind, really. And by daily practice, regular practice, you're rehabituating the way your mind relates to thought and the way you relate to your mind. Because the only way you can catch yourself thinking is if there's this other aspect of mind that's looking at the thought, right? So we've said this before, mind looking at mind. And that's what we're developing. And if you can develop that, the more you can develop that, things will start to change. We're going to read from one of Garchen Rinpoche's books. This is called The Wisdom Flame. This may be a little bit hard to buy, this book, because it was published by his Sangha in Singapore. I don't think it wasn't published by a traditional publisher. You could look on the Garchen Buddhist Institute website, or you could look at the Garchen Buddhist Center in Singapore. They have a website. So I'm going to read a little bit. I'm very biased towards Garchen Rinpoche because he's my teacher, my root lama, who I took my refuge vows with, but that's okay. So we'll do some reading. If anyone has any questions, there's a Q&A option here. You know, you can put questions, we could discuss them. But I'm going to read from Garchen Rinpoche, and I'm also going to read a little bit from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. But this is Garchen Rinpoche. How does one meditate, and what does one meditate on? The Buddha said that your own mind is a Buddha. Since your own mind is the actual Buddha, apart from purifying your mind, there is nothing else to be done. Our task throughout this and all future lifetimes is to purify our mind streams. This means that we must eliminate our afflictive emotions meaning like anger, pride, greed, jealousy, attachment, you know, like grasping attachment, like lust or that kind of thing, and ignorance. This means we must eliminate our afflictive emotions and mental fabrications because they are what defile our minds. Like water that has become dirty, our minds need to be purified of these defilements. Once you have removed all the defilements, the Buddha within your mind will reveal itself. The Buddha is the purified state of your mind. For purification, we apply various methods to pacify our afflictive emotions. If we simply do not grasp at them as they arise, they are rendered powerless. If we do not grasp at thoughts of attachment and aversion, they can do no harm. That's practicing in meditation is the thoughts arise, we don't grasp at them, we don't follow them, we leave them where they are. Garchen Rinpoche says, the Buddha said that your own mind is a Buddha. So when we did Meditation 101, which was really a secular meditation class, there wasn't much discussion of Dharma, but there was interest from the students, you know. And I asked him about that, and he said, you know, if you're going to discuss Dharma at all, keep the focus on the mind. And he said, remember that the mind, Buddha is not the name of a man or person, it's the name of mind. And he says that here again. The Buddha said that your own mind is a Buddha. Since your own mind is the actual Buddha, apart from purifying your mind, there's nothing else to be done. The Buddha is the purified state of your mind. Now, that is not meant as metaphor. We have to really remember that because, you know, very often when you're delving into the spiritual, so much is metaphor. I mean, even we're using metaphor like the clouds and the skies and stuff. But what the Buddha said and what Garchen Rinpoche is saying here is not meant to be taken as metaphor. It's meant to be taken literally. There is no other Buddha, you know, other than the mind, is what they're saying as well, you know. I think that's really important. I think that's something to really have confidence in. So as we practice, you know, when you do have those glimpses of clarity, that's what you're getting a glimpse of, you know. And the enlightened mind, I would imagine, is that being the constant state. When this mind is attained, one realizes very clearly the empty nature of mind that abides like the expanse of space. There is a clear knowing awareness that recognizes the empty nature of mind. That is the moment when all past thoughts have ceased and future thoughts have not yet arisen. At that moment, the mind abides in emptiness. And there is a clear knowing awareness that recognizes this empty space like nature. That's where we're going with the practice, you know. The more you're able to leave the thoughts where they are, go back to the breath, you're having those moments, you know, of clarity and calm and awareness, and that's where the nature of mind resides. That's what we're working towards. Sever the root of mind itself. Severing the root of mind itself. That refers to looking at the mind. Mind should look at mind itself. Awareness should look at mind itself. When awareness looks at mind itself, there is a clear knower who sees the arising and non-arising of thoughts. There's a clear knowing capacity that recognizes when a thought has arisen, or if no thoughts have arisen. There is a clear knower that is aware of all the mental events. This awareness does not pursue any thoughts that arise. You must abide without movement, without pursuing any thoughts arising in your mind. It's just like a person who's taken off all their clothes and is completely naked. That is what is known as naked awareness, free from any mental elaboration, free from any grasping and arising thoughts. I mean, that kind of stability is what we're working towards. I mean, and initially in the practice, it takes a lot of attention, a lot of effort, and a lot of 7 minutes. You may be going back and forth between the thought and going back to the breath many, many times, or not many times, and you're being led astray by the thought. But that's okay. That's what the practice is. And what I'm reading to you is what we're aspiring to. And sometimes it's good to know, where we're going with this. That quality of mind looking at mind, resting in that is what we're going for. Okay, let's see if there's any questions today that we can answer. This may sound like a naive question. Just before our session, I found the head of a dead blackbird in my garden, and it saddened me, so I decided to bury it in the earth next to the spring bulb so when the flowers grow, I can remember the blackbird. I wanted to wish it well in its next life. Is that a silly thing to do? I wasn't sure if it was just to make me feel better. No, it's not a silly thing to do. Obviously, it was your karma to encounter this dead blackbird. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they believe that the Bardo, which is the interim period between incarnations, between lives, it's one aspect of Bardo. There's Bardo when you go to sleep. That's considered a Bardo. The Bardo between thoughts. But the main thing we refer to as Bardo is between lives. After death is 49 days. So there's a period of 49 days from the time a being dies to a time when they're reborn, say, or reincarnated. So during that period, the mind can actually make connections to these beings. So you can make an aspiration that there's a blackbird, that you've had the karma to come across what it has left behind. You can make aspirations that it had a positive rebirth. You could say the four immeasurable prayers, or you could say that, the dedication, something like that. There is a specific prayer from Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche that maybe we'll put up at some time, that some of us use to practice. And we, when someone dies, and we say this prayer for 49 days to make aspirations for them to have a positive rebirth. So it's not silly at all. I mean, what I found personally is to kind of read the karma of your life, right? So you walk outside, there's a dead or dying animal or something like that. It is your karma has led you to make that connection. That's not a random thing. Not random. Karma is a result of action and causes and conditions that lead to those things, that lead to how your life unfolds. So you have to kind of pay attention to those things. So I think it's that dead blackbird may need your aspirations to help it towards its next life. Anger is not a primary emotion. I don't know what that means. I don't know what primary emotions are. Its root is always something else. I'm not sure about that. its root is probably ignorance ultimately, right? Because, you know, on an ultimate reality sense, you know, um, we're all one. So you're angry at something because it's separate from you and you're having some kind of competition with it or threat by it. So it's rooted in ignorance. So maybe that's what you're referring to. Does Buddhism teach techniques to get to the root of anger, to clear, heal it, to hone into the true emotion? Yeah, if you think about, we had the class with Dr. Vesna Wallace. If any of you have not seen that, that's available on the YouTube channel, Michael Imperioli Meditation 101, or on IGTV. You'll see Vesna Wallace. She goes into emptiness. Yes, if you meditate on emptiness, you know, it's said in the teachings that all the negative emotions stem from one negative emotion, which is ignorance, which the ignorance of not understanding ultimate nature of reality, which is emptiness, which is that kind of complete interdependence and interconnectedness and non-duality, which is a very difficult thing to realize and live out of. But it is something that you can meditate on. And that could help. Some other tools dealing with anger is, you know, applying compassion to the object of anger, you know, trying to see that the person is reacting to certain delusions and certain concepts of self that they're kind of bound by, and give you some space. Meditation is also good to deal with anger. What led you to meditation? Buddhism led me to meditation. What led me to Buddhism? Suffering, basically. Is there a technique to get the mind to look at mind? Yes, that's pretty much what we're doing, this calm, abiding meditation technique. You know, you're focusing on the breath, the thought comes up, and it's the effort you're making to become aware of the fact that you're thinking and leaving the thought. That is mind looking at mind. In essence, that's really what it is. You know, and the more you habituate this, the more this starts to play and come into play during your daily life. In some ways, the fact that you're focusing on the breath is kind of like you're aerating the mind. You know, a mind that's kind of been small and fixated and protective and focused on itself. You know, you're kind of creating space within it. So the thoughts can arise, the emotions can arise, and, you know, your actions don't immediately follow. You start to have a little bit of a gap between the thoughts, between the emotion and the action. And that's where things a benefit can arise from that. You know, you're having uh, a more intelligent approach to reacting and reacting, right? You're able to act in ways that are more in tune with how you want to act, that are more in tune with practice or Dharma, or rather than just, you know, reflex. It can often feel that I'm chasing thoughts in order to then push them away, as if I'm looking at the sky and hoping to see a cloud. And at times I can almost have no thoughts. Should I continue this way? I think you should continue focusing on the breath in that, rather than chasing the thought. Just stick with the breath. The thought will arise on its own. It's almost like your mind's doing two things at once, but, you know, the more you do this, the more this will get, you know, this will become easier. So you're focusing on the breath, and you become aware of a thought coming in, right? I'm aware that I'm going to get in my car in about half an hour, and leaving that, going back to the breath. I'm thinking, are there tolls on the road? Leave that, go back to the breath. And it's that stillness, you know, in the body and in the breath, that stillness that allows us to have access to this, you know, to examining the mind and becoming aware of it. Thoughts might have emotions attached. While meditation, we try not to grasp the thoughts and let them go, but some emotions may be stored in the body. How to release stored emotion that we didn't manage to let go? I mean, as far as dealing with emotions, we're really talking about here dealing with them as they arise in the meditation practice. I'm not sure about the emotions stored in the body. I'm not. I don't really have an answer for that, or much experience dealing with that. I'm just talking about emotions as we become aware of them arising when we're practicing, or in life. You know, like we were saying, your daily life, you're aware you're angry at your partner or your kid or something, and rather than just lashing out or doing something, you know, out of that anger, to try to have some space. Maybe there's a better way to deal with it than yelling, or, you know, what's a good place to start on researching karma? Um, the Dalai Lama, you can see if he has any books on karma. Tubten Chodron, Tubten Chodron. Chala Kyabgon has a good book on karma. It's a little bit, um, it's a little heavy, you know, and just in conceptually, it's pretty, you know, it takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of, it's a bit complex, but it's good. Tralegyabgon, Tralegyabgon, I think. And I think Lama Yeshe. Check out some Lama Yeshe's books. There might be some good books on karma. I find my concentration and ability to let go of thoughts and focus can sometimes slide after junk food or binge eating. How much emphasis do Buddhists put on diet in relation to maintaining a healthy mind? You know, there's no catch-all for Buddhists. There's a lot of different, you know, schools of Buddhism. There's a lot of different countries that have their different flavor of Buddhism. So there's not a one size fits all in terms of diet in Buddhism. Some are vegetarian, some are not. Monks, monastics have a different thing in terms of diet. They don't eat after lunch. You know, I would just trust yourself there, you know. You know, if you find that eating certain foods, you know, makes you not feel so good when you meditate, and then, you know, change your diet. I would say use your instincts there. But, you know, health is important, you know, makes it a little easier to sit for longer periods of time, you know. It's your mind's sharper if you're eating healthy, but what's not good is to be too hyper focused on diet, you know what I mean, and make that all your attention, unless you have serious health problems and you do have to eat very, very specifically, which a lot of people do. But you know, don't make that an obsession, you know, and a kind of a self-cherishing obsession that I'm only going to eat this, and I'm only, you know, you know, moderation, being reasonable about that, being healthy, you know. Do you ever find yourself looking at the mind or thoughts in everything you do? Yeah, you should. You know, that's where we're headed. You know, if mind is looking at mind, you know, the more mind looks at mind, the better. You know, the more we can rest in that clear nature of mind, the less, you know, the less possessed we're going to be by things that, you know, upset us or difficult, you know, like the first noble truth, the first teaching of Buddha in life, that you're going to encounter suffering. um, and being able to have that spacious mind allows us to cope a little better. How long should one strive to meditate for you if you'd like to make it a daily practice? That's really up to you. In the beginning, I think if you can meditate for 10 minutes a day in the beginning, or even 5 minutes a day, or 7 minutes a day, it's great. And then you may find you prefer sitting for 20 minutes or longer. But I think regular, making this a habit, making this regular is more important than just striving to do it for a long time. Do you have any tips for meditation places when the place itself draws your attention? This person spent weeks in the Himalayas, in monasteries, absorbing the beauty, nature, and history, which made meditation difficult. If you're going to holy places, that's usually, inspiring. Sometimes you'll be inspired to meditate in nature, a beautiful view, a mountaintop or a beach or something like that. Meditation in places where the place draws your attention, I don't really have tips for that. I would just say sometimes easier, sometimes it's harder, depending on. If you're in the middle of New York City, sitting on a bench, it may be hard because it's noisy and it's lots of people, and maybe people interacting with you and stuff like that. But it's good to practice in different situations, in different environments, because in life things are constantly changing. So to have that kind of meditative quality in your mind, practicing in different situations, is always good. I find that I lose my calm and generous state of mind if I fail to practice for a few days. Is regular practice the answer? Probably. Regular practice can't hurt. Is there anything within the practice you have disagreed with? Not really. Is it okay to disagree with something within the practice? It's hard to say that abstractly. You have to really be specific. If it's a big conceptual thing like karma, there's some kind of, there's a few, I don't know if you'd call them renegade Buddhists who were, one of them was a monk in the Tibetan tradition and left and has written a bunch of books with his own kind of interpretation of Buddhism without beliefs, and not believing in karma, not believing in reincarnation. I don't think it's like, like I've said this before, Buddhism to me is not an interpretive thing where you take what works and leave the rest. If you're not a Buddhist, you can do that. You're not a Buddhist, you could do whatever you want with these teachings, with the techniques and stuff like that. But if you're a Buddhist, go to the source and follow the source. Taking what doesn't agree, I don't necessarily, I can't imagine Buddhism without karma or without, reincarnation. And, for someone just to decide that that doesn't work for them and, say it's still Buddhism, I don't really buy that. I'll be honest with you. I stick to the source. I say this a lot. Go to the source. If these teachings interest you, go to authentic lamas from authentic lineages. It's really important. And I've said this before too. Buddhism sometimes gets lumped into self-helpy mindfulness, new agey kind of things, and it's go to the source. Don't go to watered down kind of things that have a little Buddhism and a little Hindu. Unless that works for you, that's fine. But if you want the teachings, if you want Buddhism, go to the source. I think it's very important. Okay, let's sit again. I'm going to sit for another 7 minutes. Okay. Nick, I think there was a book we recommended a few weeks ago called Good Karma. I think it may have been by Ziglar Control Rinpoche. If you find that, or if you can look that up, if that's the name of it, that would be helpful. Thanks. I think that's a good book on, yeah, Good Karma. Tupten Chodron. Yeah, that was one of the authors we mentioned. That's a good book on karma. Tupten Chodron's a nun, American nun in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, actually. I want to read from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was really the first the first Lama to plant the flag of Tibetan Buddhism in the West. It started Naropa University, which is a college dedicated to a lot of it's an art and psychology school, spiritual, meditation, mindfulness practice school, but it's a college in Boulder, Colorado. And he has many books. He passed away in 1989, but he has many, many, many books, great books, a great teacher. The process of learning to wake up takes time and painful measures of all kinds. The learning process is not an easy matter. It is not easy because we do not want to surrender our basic security. The teachings of Buddhism are not a source of security such as the freedom of nirvana or something like that. The teachings do not present another form of security at all, but bring the absence of any kind of security. Enlightenment is the complete absence of any kind of promises. We have to give up the tendency to look for solid, serious, or magical results. We have to give up trying to manufacture results through gimmicks. Somehow, such neurotic psychological games do not apply. Nevertheless, there is something extremely positive about our search for understanding, something that we could use as a stepping stone. That stepping stone is the chaos in our life, the pain and chaos and dissatisfaction and hunger and thirst. Those dissatisfactions and our search for something better, that psychological pain, is the beginning of the teaching. Unless there is pain and dissatisfaction, there's nowhere at all to begin. That pain is the direct experience of our basic insecurity. Looking for security and failing to find it is a glimpse of egolessness. We perceive possibilities of failure, of losing our grip, of not being able to manufacture the ideal, pleasurable situation. Such perceptions are extremely positive from the point of view of embarking on the path of Buddhadharma. As someone asked before, what led you to meditation? I said, Buddhism led me to meditation. What led me to Buddhism? Dissatisfaction and, the pain and things like that. This is a continuation of this, what he was saying. Everyone begins his or her journey on the path by experiencing dissatisfaction. Something is missing somewhere, and we are frantically looking for it. But even though we run faster and faster and faster, we do not discover anything at all. There is the constant sense that we are missing the point. So we start to ask questions. We question our whole idea of security and pain and pleasure. We question the validity of spirituality, how efficient, magical, or pleasurable it might be. And all these questions that we ask contain the knowledge that our ego-centered wishes may not be fulfilled in the end. We already have that impression, therefore we ask the questions. The discovery that comes out of the questioning process is that there is something completely mysterious. At some stage, we run out of questions. Something is completely blank to the point where we cannot even think of questions anymore. We are completely bewildered and we wonder concerning this questioning process that is going on. Who is fooling whom? But if we look and investigate, we find neither the fooler nor the fooling process. When we try to pinpoint anything, it dissolves. I encourage you, if you haven't read any of his books, to do so, because he had a particular skill at communicating to the Western mind, Western students. All right, we'll try it. If there's any other questions, then we'll maybe sit a little more. Do you have any recommendations for authentic teachers in New York? There's a center called KPL, Kunzang Palchen Ling in Red Hook, not Brooklyn, Red Hook, upstate New York. Bardo Tulku Rinpoche is the runs that center. But in New York City, there's always a lot of teachers. I mean, right now because of COVID, there probably hasn't been a lot of live teachings. But Tibet House hosts a lot of visiting lamas. Also, the Rubin Museum often has visiting lamas. There is a Rigpa Center in New York that has lamas teaching often, as the Dzogchen community, Dzogchen, Dzogchen, which was founded by Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. They have some. I was there last in 2019 for Ringu Tulku Rinpoche did a teaching there. That someone was asking about authentic teachers in New York. Could you please describe karma a bit more? How do you explain suffering from child loss? I mean, why do bad things happen to good people? That's a really great question and a big question. And it's a very difficult concept for a lot of people to accept. But in a nutshell, so you may ask, how could a 2-year-old, get cancer and suffer and, die of something horrific like that, with suffering, an innocent being? And this is hard for a lot of people to accept. But in a Buddhist point of view, and that's all I'm speaking about is a Buddhist point of view, and Buddhist teachings, is that it's the result of actions from past lives. It's so certain actions done in previous lifetimes created a seed that has come, and this seed has ripened into this, suffering in this present life. That's it in a nutshell. So there are some things that you do that will come to result, will have its resultant effect in this life, maybe immediate. You know what I mean? I mean, if I take this microphone and hit myself in the head, I'm probably going to get a bruise. I mean, that's cause and effect too. Karma is about cause and effect. There are some actions that you can do of body, speech, and mind. You're talking about thoughts, which have a certain karmic effect. Actions of the body, actions of speech. That may not, you may cheat someone, say, in a deal out of money, and maybe you'll get away with it in this lifetime. But maybe in a future lifetime, you will be cheated. Often the result is similar to the cause, or maybe something else will happen, and maybe it won't be related to a business deal, or maybe, an illness or something like that. But they do say karma is infallible and unavoidable. A lot of questions about karma came up when Donald Trump got COVID. And a lot of people saying, well, that's karma because he didn't handle the COVID properly. And yes, it is karma because if he would have handled the situation properly, less people would have had it, and he might not have caught it. But it's also karma that he became president. It's also America's collective karma as citizens that you are living in a country where he was president. So it's not just this cosmic system of punishment and reward, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's causes and conditions that, lead to effects. And there's no, they're not limited to just this lifetime and just, this existence. The one thing though, when there is suffering in life, you can look at it as a ripening of past negative karma. And the fact that you are suffering, you're kind of almost expending that karmic or kind of paying off that karmic debt. So even amidst a lot of difficulty and suffering, you can look at it in somewhat of a hopeful or positive way, saying, well, at least I'm bearing this suffering, and at least whatever gave rise to the suffering in this life or prior lives, I'm exhausting that karma and I can move on from that now. Does mantra meditation fit anywhere in Tibetan Buddhism? Yeah, it does, but usually that's given to you by your teacher, your lama. Not really in this study group, as we like to call this. How did you get into the specific type of Buddhism you follow as opposed to another? I was kind of just drawn to Tibetan Buddhism. I was exposed to it and drawn to it. We just sometimes find our way. I like Tibetan Buddhism because Tibet was relatively or pretty much isolated from the rest of the world for many, 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 many years. So the teaching stayed very contained and very, passed down orally from master to student, from teacher to disciple for unbroken long stretches of time. And when it kind of emerged into the rest of the world, it maintained that kind of purity of lineage, at least, I think. But nothing against any other form of Buddhism. And this is just what I know. Is there such thing as good ego, or is all ego considered bad? Is it down to the intent behind it, what fuels the ego? I mean, good and bad is not really the way to look at it. It's kind of what is the ego? What you should be looking at. What is the ego? Because what is the self? And meditate on that. And again, going back to Dr. Vesna Wallace's teaching in our class here. Go back to that and think of ego and self in terms of what she teaches about emptiness. That's really, I think, much more important than whether good ego or bad ego, really meditating on what it is. Excellent. All right. Let's sit for 5 minutes and then we will dedicate. Okay. We'll see if there's any last minute questions we can talk about. For those of you who have continually been with us, thank you for supporting this by showing up. Okay. Let's see. There are some questions on karma, I guess. I was in a car accident and paraplegic. I don't like that explanation of karma to explain the suffering of an innocent person, almost like assigning blame. No, it's not assigning blame to that person because that person didn't do it, right? You're not the same person that you were in a previous life. There's a connection, but you're not the same. And we don't have to, it's like, do you like the fact that you are suffering? No. I mean, if you have a better explanation, I would be open to hearing it. But that is Buddhism. I mean, if you think about it, nothing is really random. There's causes, and even something that seems random has causes and conditions behind it. But I try to look at karma as happening on a much more energetic level than on a moralistic, ethical level. Although in your daily life, morals and ethics are of course at play. But the karma that you're going to carry into another incarnation, which may not be human, by the way, it may be an animal, it may be an insect, who knows? The karma that you're carrying at that point is not, you're not carrying the fact that you robbed somebody at gunpoint or something like that. You're carrying an energetic charge that has that carry some of that negativity of whatever that action was. So think of it in terms of energy, and that energy now residing somewhere in your consciousness and now in your being in this current life, and that is something that you've carried. But I think, if you don't like that explanation to explain the suffering of an innocent person, almost like assigning blame, the blame is not on that innocent person, right? The blame is on that person in the other life, and it's not exactly the same person. It's like as if, right, say you had a grandfather who did something horrible, say he killed somebody, and now you as a grandchild still in this town, wherever they're from, still kind of carries the scandal and the negativity of that action, and it kind of, it colors how people look at you in the present. Now, are you to blame for that? Was it you who did it? um you know I would read, go to the source, like I said, go to the real, this, it is a very important part of Buddhism, karma. you know but don't think of it that you're blaming that person. A 2-year-old who gets cancer doesn't have a conscious awareness of some horrible deed they may have done in a prior lifetime. You know what I mean? Their intention in that moment is not to cause harm. The other thing is that, you can't separate reincarnation from the concept of emptiness and the concept of non-duality and interconnectedness. You don't like it because you're identifying the self with this judgment. Again, going back to the class that Dr. Vesna Wallace taught, the self as we perceive it is an illusion as we perceive it. And it's, so if you are looking at from the ego and the self as we've habituated our minds to perceive the self, yeah, you're not going to like it. But yeah, it's not an easy concept, I guess people would rather say it's just, bad luck. Bad things happen to innocent people because of bad luck. But in Buddhist philosophy, it doesn't really account for luck. That everything's a result of karma. It's actually very scientific, cause and effect. Every action has a reaction. Not these, the reactions don't always manifest and come into fruition in terms of time as we, instantly. No, but it is difficult. I understand. But there's no other, in terms of Buddhist philosophy, there's no other explanation. So, it feels a difficult juggling act to balance compassion for a terrible incident and the logic of there being a reason for it in a past life. What would make it easier? Like I said, bad luck? I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's very liberating to think in terms of karma, because if there's no such thing as bad luck, then that in the present moment, that leaves you an awful lot of potential to create good circumstances and good karma. Think of it in those terms. The past is over. I mean, we only have ability to affect reality in the present, right? And if you're waking up and understanding that that the law of karma and law of cause and effect, you can directly influence, your own future and your own future lifetimes by practicing from here on in. In some ways, it's very optimistic and positive. Let us dedicate the merit of today's session to the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you very much for today. See you next week.